In the past, Marvel Comics used to do a lot of lead up to event series, especially the big crossover events, the ones that affected the entire Marvel Comics universe. That hasn't really been the case lately, and it doesn't appear that will be the case in 2022, as we're getting another major event coming out called Judgment Day. The X-Men, Avengers, and Eternals will all collide. And we've certainly had some information coming out that have hinted at this in the solicitations for March 9th's Eternals number 10 by Kieran Gillen. It says it's leading into the biggest Marvel Comics storyline of 2022. And previously, Marvel revealed its Avengers X-Men one-shot free comic book day issue would lay the groundwork for a 2022 event that drastically alters the relationship between mutant kind and the Earth's mightiest hero. Has that not been happening already between holding the world hostage with magic medicine, kidnapping Franklin Richards, mind-wiping Reed Richards, barring humans from entering Krakoa, and terraforming Mars, just to name a few? There's certainly been tensions. They just should have been fighting already, kind of leading up to this. But where do the Eternals get into this? Or they just, it feels like they're just throwing them in there because there was a movie and they thought it might be important. Turns out that wasn't exactly the case. I am going to get to a bit more information to that here later in the video. Now, Marvel has all but confirmed these speculations when they released a teaser image featuring the logos for X-Men, Avengers, and the Eternals. And the text Judgment Day is coming, hinting that the franchises will clash next summer. And the timing of this will coincide with the 10-year anniversary of the last major conflict between Marvel's premier team-up books, Avengers versus X-Men. There is more information on this in today's Timeless number 1. There will be a video tomorrow. Now, as far as my opinions on the limited information that I have right now, Marvel's event schedule is absolutely bonkers. It is not changing apparently in 2022. There have been far too many broken promises over the last 5 years. Remember when CB Cebulski came in? Oh, we're going to pull back events. They certainly have not done that. It feels like they've gotten even more prevalent. And they're always saying, we're going to do a status quo change. Everything will be different after this event. And it only leads in to the next event and leads to diminishing returns and certainly readjusted expectations and levels of enthusiasm among the readers who they're supposed to be entertaining with an event book like this. Now let's take in the very first quarter of 2022, we have Devil's Reign. That literally includes the Avengers. It literally includes the X-Men. It includes Spider-Man. It includes the Defenders and all the major heroes, including the Fantastic Four in the New York City area. This thing is supposed to be enormous, supposed to have huge ramifications. We've been promised that for months now. And now it's all but confirmed. You probably won't see any of these ramifications anywhere other than probably Daredevil. Why do a line-wide crossover event if you're not going to let the fallout breathe and let the readers and the writers experience what exactly is the after effects of all this madness that we've just been through? And Marvel just cannot contain themselves. It has become more and more unbearable as time goes on. Now, speaking of compressed event schedules, what about 10 Lives and Deaths of Wolverine? They're selling this like it's the next House of X Powers of 10, leading into the second age of Krakoa, and it's going to have these dramatic fallouts, these things that you just cannot miss that are so important to the X-Men. They're so important that they're just going to move into another event where they're fighting the Avengers. How are people supposed to get excited and invest fully in 10 Lives and Deaths of Wolverine when they're already being inundated with the information on the event, the next event? How were retailers supposed to gauge the interest of their audience if their interest is already being diverted to another big event book? The X-Men are in a not great place. There's a couple of pretty decent selling titles, but it's pretty disjointed right now. 10 Lives, 10 Deaths event is supposed to kind of condense everything, get it back on track, and get things moving in the right direction again. But once it's complete, how are the writers and the universe going to settle down and move in a more coherent direction if once again they're being dragged into another event book? This is not good for X-Men, and quite frankly, it's not really good for any. Well, let me take that back. It is good for Avengers and Eternals because, quite frankly, Avengers aren't in a good place. They haven't been in a good place for a very long time under Jason Aaron. I know some people really enjoyed Heroes Reborn, but I hate to break it to you. In 5 years, when you go back and read that, you're going to be like, this is pretty average. But at this point, average is so much better than what Jason Aaron's been producing on Avengers. It felt like you're reading the Avengers Defenders War or the Korvac Saga or something mind-blowing like that. The Avengers is supposed to be a very important book. And it certainly has been hinted at, and I speculated maybe 18 to 24 months ago that it felt like they were probably moving towards an Avengers X-Men book. But it feels like it's all been abandoned within the last 12 months. Sure, there's some underlying tensions, and there are some events that have happened, but for the most part, there's almost been no conflict between any Avengers characters and any X-Men characters. One event where you really could have seeded some conflict between the two would have been the Trial of Magneto, but hell, the writer on that was so incompetent in that Trial of Magneto book that included the Avengers that they forgot to do a trial. That's the place that we're in with Marvel Comics. It's absolutely insane. You know, including the Avengers in here, I guess it can't be a bad thing because it's kind of embarrassing, but the X-Men actually have more juice, even though the X-Men's in a bad place right now. And then you think about it, two of these titles are essentially the premier, most important team-up books in all Marvel Comics, and the other one is Eternals. What the hell is this thing even doing here? Like, it feels like the ultimate throw-on. I guess anything that can spark interest in Eternals at this point wouldn't hurt. I tried to read the first issue. It was so boring. And, you know, I basically went into a coma. I've heard from a couple of viewers that think Eternals is all right, but I don't think anyone's actually reading this comic book. I believe that Marvel Comics anticipated that the overwhelming success of the Eternals movie would lead to more interest in the Eternals book. That's why they put Kieran Gillen and Asad Ribic on the book. Those are really good creators. They might not be superstars, but they're, you know, a notch below. But nobody cared. The movie didn't take off. And, you know, it got mixed reviews from the people that did watch. I love Jack Kirby. I do love Jack Kirby, and he is amazing. But the Eternals just isn't one of those things that he created that's mind-blowing. You know, that if you want to read really good Eternals, go to DC Comics and read his Fourth World. Go read about Apocalypse, the New Gods, because that's where the good stuff happens. All the leftovers, all the giblets ended up over at Marvel and Eternals, and people know that, and they know it's not important. And throwing this team on this makes the event itself less important. Because you're like, okay, Avengers, X-Men, even if they're not in a good place, those are premier titles. Eternals, why don't we throw the Runaways on here while we're at it? Why don't we throw Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur on here while we're at it? Why don't we throw a host of other nondescript, unpopular team-up books, you know, in with this event and try to get them over with it as well? You're really only degrading the interest in the overall event itself and the perception that this thing could actually be important. Could this be good? Absolutely. I would love for Marvel to defy my expectations, to subvert reader expectations and deliver a competent, well thought out, impactful event comic. But they haven't done that in quite some time, and I don't think they're going to do it here. They really have not been leading up to this. Most of the things that I talked about that, you know, foretold tensions between the Avengers and the X-Men, those happened quite a while ago. It's not like it's been an ongoing plot line where there's this inevitable conflict that it's heating up. It's just going to come out of nowhere, like all other Marvel Comics events. Like you look at Devil's Reign. Oh, you know, Wilson Fisk is running for president now, and every Marvel hero, you know, Tom, Dick, and Harry in the Marvel Comics universe is jumped into New York to fight for it. I just wish there was more planning. Certainly there is planning. You look at Timeless. They've mapped up the year, but I think their planning is just like, we're going to do an event rather than we're going to lead to an event. And this is going to be the fallout, and this is what's going to make it important, and this is why people are going to remember it in 10 or 15 years. I think that is all an afterthought. I think they just throw these events in there because they need a spike in numbers. They're like, well, there was an event last year, and if we want to keep up with previous numbers, we have to do another event. Oh, wait, this one's lagging behind now? We got to throw an extra event in there. And the event schedule just gets more and more bloated over time. At least that's my impression. Definitely want to hear your thoughts. I want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on Judgment Day? Are you excited for an Avengers, X-Men, Eternals crossover? I hope you are. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.